Welcome back to Bagels and Locks. I'm your host, Brandon Rothberg, alongside my co-host, Jason Silverstone. This is episode 4 of Bagels and Locks. Today's guest, we have Jonah Newman, who's got his own weekly sports newsletter, someone we know from college, great guy, a lot of knowledge, especially when it comes to soccer, which I don't know about you, Jason. My knowledge lacks a little bit thereof when it comes to soccer. I did play for like 6 or 7 years growing up. I was not good by any means. Don't get excited. But I'm excited to have Jonah come on with us in a little bit.
Yeah, it should be pretty exciting. It's a topic we usually do not touch upon on this show, so it'll be awesome for our audience to hear about that. But I'm shocked you say you played for 7 years, and one, you're not very good at it, and two, you don't know very much about it. What were you doing during the better half of that decade?
Well, I grew up, so this is like the first sport that I learned how to play, I guess. And I wasn't even good. I remember 2 things. And I know
Okay.
that I played for like 7 years because I have 7 trophies, but we got rid of them. Regardless, there was one practice I had where I got like someone hit a line shot right at my chest, knocked the wind out of me. I was probably like 8 years old. And I remember just being like stone cold in the grass like this, as if I'm being like resurrected. And it hurt like hell. And I was like, what? Sports? Because this sucked. I thought it sucked. But, eventually I got my wind back, if you will. I felt better. I was able to get up on my feet. That's one memory I have. And then the other memory I have is the one goal that I ever scored. And I had like a breakaway somehow. I
Nice.
liked playing like rover. Is that even the real position in soccer these days? I don't know. I don't
It
think
might
so.
be a term for a position. It's not one that I'm familiar with.
Well, rover was like you play offense like and defense
So you're like
in
midfield.
yeah.
Okay.
So I liked when I got the chance to have that position, and I scored my like one and only goal on a breakaway against this kid who we went to school with. Some of you guys listening out there may know who it was. As Jared Char. I know you don't know who he is, Jason.
I know of him.
You know of him? Okay. Big athlete. Played football at Michigan. Walked on, I think. Um, but yeah, that was like a proud moment in my soccer career. The one goal I ever had. Never anything else. So, but I hated it. It was just so much running, and I was like a little chunky kid, and it was not for me. And I eventually found my liking in baseball, and I said, "See you
A
later,
lot less
soccer."
running in baseball.
Oh yeah, especially when you're a flamethrower on the mound, lefty throwing 98 away, nasty stuff like throwing in the mid 80s that off speed pitch when you're 10 years old. So
98 was your off speed.
no. Like mid 80s was my off speed, but I could touch like 95, 96. Really heavily
I can't
scouted
tell
by
if you're
coaches.
joking or not right now.
I'm fully kidding. I probably topped. I probably hit. I want to
You said
say
that
maybe
with
like.
such conviction. I was like, there is no way.
Oh, I gotcha. Bro, there's no way. If that was the case,
You would not be
I
here
would be
today. Let's just say
complaining.
that.
It's true. I wouldn't be on Bagels and Locks. Maybe. Who knows?
As a
Well, actually,
guest.
I wouldn't know you. I would have no idea who you were. I would be complaining that I'm probably going to make less than half of my designated salary, which we will break into in a little bit here. But yeah. So Jason, what have you been doing? What's going on? Playing any video games? Doing anything special? We just had Memorial Day came and went. What's good with you?
Honestly, not much. I've just been doing some class. I got a couple classes at MSU I got to finish up, so that's been as boring as you can imagine. Um, been playing a little bit, just playing some Madden per usual. I found a little
Sure.
coin method. I had 20,000 coins like 4 days ago. I got like 900,000 now. So I found a
You
little glitch
grind
in
them.
this. I found a glitch in the system. And Memorial Day, I went over to my dad's house. Got a good sweat in on the elliptical. Went to go visit
Good
my
schwitz.
grandpa. A good schwitz. But my papa was sleeping, so we didn't want to disturb him, and just headed home
Wait,
and
what?
hung out. And
Wait, you
that
can't. You can't. No. You can't just like say that and then move on to something else. Explain. Like, I need to know what
Like
happened.
we pulled up and we
Uh-huh.
saw like his bedroom is kind of like off of the front door, which is like all glass and you can see through it. His bedroom door is open, and
Mm-hmm.
he was sleeping in his bed, and we didn't want to disturb him, let him get some beauty sleep. So we just headed home. We talked to him a little bit later on the phone,
Sure.
and that was that. Pretty mild Memorial Day though, as you can imagine, with all this COVID stuff going on. But summer's officially here, so let's get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I've been golfing a lot recently, playing a lot of golf. I played on Memorial Day. Super hot out. I think we touched like 87 to 88, and we're not talking me with the fastball. We're talking weather here.
Yeah,
It was pretty humid, but my golf game is slowly improving. I'm feeling really good. Um, we talked a couple episodes ago about my 2K player. I have not touched that since then. I got my PlayStation Plus. So that's basically like how you play online for PlayStation. I got a year subscription, and now I can play MLB The Show again. So I've been playing dudes like every single day online, and I'm like killing it. Like, my record's not great, my overall record, but it seems like every time I play, someone has like a 99 Kershaw or like a 99 Nolan Ryan, and it's so annoying. It's
hmm
like, because it's MLB 19, so a lot of people that you're playing, like, that game's been out for over a year. Like, all these guys have like the best cards already,
yep.
so it's just whack. But
It's a
I'm hanging in there.
similar it's a similar experience in Madden right now because the new one's coming out in a couple months. So pretty much every Ultimate team I play is all 99, 98, players,
Yeah,
which my team has it too. So I'm fine with it. But
right.
it is what it
No, it,
is.
it exactly. You stole the words right out of my mouth. So we're gonna break down something that you had sent to me a few days ago. Leading off here, so not only did Tom Brady rip his pants during the match that was played on
He
Sunday,
did.
he ripped his pants, but there was something else, some other news that broke in relation to Tom Brady and pants, not necessarily ripping. I think you know where I'm going with this here, so
I
why don't you
do.
help us and take it from here?
Okay, so as we know, a lot of these pro sports leagues are, up in the air as to whether they will actually be happening or not. And a lot of the practice facilities and whatnot are closed right now. So Tom Brady had a closed practice with some of his new teammates on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And one of those teammates was center Ryan Jensen. And obviously, it's very important that your quarterback and your center have a good relationship, figure things out, because, the quarterback's under center taking a lot of snaps, over the course of the season. And it's important to not fumble the ball, make sure that it's just right. And Tom has been in New England for the past 20 years and has only dealt with a handful of centers and has made sure his relationship with those guys has been perfect. So he's been trying to get that down with new Tampa Bay Buccaneers center Ryan Jensen. And according to Tom, Ryan Jensen has a sweaty ass. And Ryan did not think that he had a sweaty ass before Tom let him know this. So Tom has a solution for it, apparently. So I guess one of his old centers must have also had a sweaty behind. Um, and Ryan Jensen actually tweeted it out. It's a picture of him and Tom talking, and Tom is holding, one of those hand towels they have on the sideline. And the tweet says, "First, you fold the towel once, then over itself again. Put it down your crack and douse it in baby powder. You'll have no more ass sweat." So it's obviously really hard to throw a football when it's wet. That's why, during a lot of games in the rain, they'll be running the ball a lot, not really passing it, kind of taking a lot of caution with that. But Tom wanted to make sure that this ball is as dry as possible. And also, when he's under center, his hand is, pretty good in there, up in his behind, and you just don't want to be touching another guy's sweaty ass. So I can understand Tom Brady for this one, but definitely some of the funniest news that we've had all quarantine.
Right. Well, when you have a relationship with a player who you're not necessarily making eye contact with, you're kind of making butt contact with, it's the last thing you want to see is a kind of a sweaty butt right in front of you, especially in, the fourth quarter, when Brady, may have a situation where he's got to clutch it out for his new team. So crazy how that was made into some news over the weekend. You think about, well, this guy, Frank Schwab, the byline for that story, rather interesting. I wonder, like, was he the one who was like, guys, I saw this tweet and pitched it to, this is from a Yahoo Sports. Did he pitch it to Yahoo? Did Yahoo come to him and be like, yo, like, you gotta, put this out there? Who knows? But, when Tom Brady's involved, something, regardless, whatever the case may be, it's going to be big and it's going to be out there.
Well, and he's he's the GOAT.
Just like his butt. It's going to be big and it's going to be out there.
That was a good one. That was a good one. I'm glad you snuck that one in there.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, he's the greatest quarterback of all time. If Michael Jordan, we just got finished watching The Last Dance, told you to do something a certain way, you're not going to question him about it or do anything different. So if Tom Brady wants it done a certain way, that's what you're going to do to win football games. And who knows, Jameis Winston last year threw 30 interceptions. For all we know, it's because Ryan Jensen's ass was so sweaty that the ball was so slippery he could not throw it accurately.
Oh my gosh.
I guess we'll have to see going forward.
That is, who would even think of that? That's incredible. Way to be on your feet there, Jason. I mean, that could have been the case. That totally could have been. And maybe, who knows, maybe Jameis is thinking, wow, like Tom, taking advantage of this, months before the season starts. Look at you. Goes to show how his being the GOAT, who would have thought that the GOAT has those capabilities to stand up and do something about a sweaty butt. So, Tom Brady, if you're out there listening, good for you.
Yeah, maybe Jameis Winston just didn't have the balls to confront his center and be like, look, dude, like your butt is ridiculously sweaty. Like, we got to figure something out. We got to do something about it. But, I actually do love Jameis Winston, and he got LASIK eye surgery like a month ago, and he said he can now read street signs. So
wow.
it probably was a combination of the ass sweat and him not being able to see anything.
Well, with Jameis needing LASIK, I think this one's kind of an eye squinter, this story, but it is true. So the Pensacola Blue Wahoos have put their stadium, this is a minor league baseball team, they've put their stadium up on Airbnb for you to rent it. So we had also touched upon this a couple episodes ago, talked about Airbnb and how they've been struggling with the whole coronavirus situation. But this would be something that's so out of the ordinary. When has this ever happened? So they're the Double-A affiliate of the Minnesota Twins. And for $1,500 a night plus fees, you can bring up to 10 guests and you get full access to the stadium. So access to the clubhouse, batting cages, field, batting practice center. Like, you can literally do whatever you want. The listing says guests are welcome to hit from home plate, play catch in the outfield, run the bases, enjoy a picnic in the outfield, or find other creative uses for the field. So, Jason, what are your thoughts if you got 9 of your closest friends, hopefully including myself, and I think I would be a part of that, to rent that stadium out for maybe a night, maybe 2, sort of a weekend gig? Would you do it? I mean, to me, that sounds awesome and totally worth it.
I definitely agree with you. I think it would make for like one hell of a bachelor party to just spend like a couple nights at a pro stadium. And I think we should maybe get like a GoFundMe going for Bagels and Locks, raise $1,500. We do our next episode live from inside that stadium overnight.
My gosh. Yes. Make a whole event out of it. Throw batting practice against each other, and
we can see that. We can see you throw 95.
True. Very true. Put my skills to the test. I mean, $1,500 for 10 people, that's $150 a night per person. Like,
it's not bad.
It is not bad. I'd rather do that than, well, it depends on what you're doing, but to go and spend a night or two, have the stadium yourself, that's like every baseball player's dream. Because I don't know about you, but like, I go to Comerica Park, or just I'm watching a baseball game, and when you're there, it's like, wow, like, it'd be so cool to go take batting practice or be out in the outfield, like shag a fly ball. And granted, It's not a major league stadium, but still, like, you're getting such a unique experience for not that much money.
I also think it'd be super cool to like play video games on the big screen, or like watch a movie, or do something like that. Just throw on your favorite playlist, blast it on the speaker's surround sound. Like, I don't know. There's a bunch of different fun stuff you could do. It
Yeah,
also says that the bedroom next to the clubhouse sleeps 10, and a staff member will stay on site for security and to answer questions. So that the part about the guy keep being there for security reasons, you know, I, I'm not that big of a fan of it. He might be sort of a buzzkill. I hope he's a fun, cool guy, but I do completely understand why they have to do it. But when you rent out other Airbnbs, the owner's not there for security reasons. You know what I mean?
right.
They let you do what you got to do.
I understand because who knows? Anybody could get super drunk and light the stadium on fire. I mean, like there's crazy things that could happen, and you got to have someone on hand to kind of keep the situation cool. Um, but speaking of the total opposite of keeping a cool situation, we have Major League Baseball. They call it the hot stove in the wintertime when there's a lot of free agencies and or free agent signings and whatnot. But this is definitely a hot stove of a different variety because there's been discussion ongoing for weeks now, trying to get the season up and running. The first thing we heard, Jason, was that they were looking for a mid-June reimagining of spring training, if you will, kind of getting the players back on the field, back in shape, and playing simulated games, and then starting the season come 4th of July. But here we are. It's May 27th. A lot of negotiations and discussions are still taking place. Nothing's been set in stone. Players are pissed, and no one really knows what's going on. So I, for one, hate this. I think any baseball fan, any sports fan is sick of the situation. We want an answer. We still don't know what's happening. I'm just curious to see your thoughts on this and if we will even get a baseball season this year.
I think we're going to get a baseball season this year. It sort of relates to our next topic that we're about to dive into a little bit, but it's mostly because of the players and owners trying to negotiate on how much money and revenue sharing will happen with this abbreviated season. But I think most of the players want to play. I think most of the owners want them to play, and I think most of the fans want baseball back. And at the end of the day, even if these guys end up taking a big pay cut, they still make more money than most people in the entire world. And a lot are just grateful for the opportunity to go out there and play. I believe I saw a line in my book last week, and it was like, will the NBA return by this date? Like before or after, and then it was will the MLB return by this date before or after, and the MLB date was before the NBA date by like I think a week,
Mm,
but the MLB odds that it will not be played by that date were heavily in the favor of it being pushed back even further.
really?
Um, but yes, but I do think it will happen, especially because I mean there's so much hype around Korean baseball right now that I
Hmm.
think people are just itching for MLB.
So here's the thing, and this is what makes it interesting, is that you have the NBA and the NFL, or excuse me, the NHL, two seasons that were already taking place before the virus hit. So you had teams that were playing. In both scenarios, you have some teams that are clearly postseason bound, right? Like they clearly would have been in the playoffs, regardless of the situation at hand. Obviously, what's different with the MLB is that no one's even played a single game yet. So a lot of speculation is that they're saying, well, some of the playoff bound teams in the NBA and in the NHL, it's only going to be those teams that end up playing when their respected sport comes back, which makes sense to a degree. But it's a little bit unfair to some of those fan bases with teams that, you know, aren't the Milwaukee Bucks or the Lakers. So um, what's what's really questionable here is, do they take that into effect? But baseball is so different because it's the least, contact of those three sports. You're not really close to one another other than maybe on the base paths. So I think that is a key scenario here that plays out, but obviously there's still argument on both sides and nothing's been made uh, into writing yet. I wonder, Jason, the season would have been going on. So are these players, are they making money right now? Like, is there any sort of revenue, or not revenue? Well, revenue for the teams, um, but are these, is Mike Trout making money right now? That's what I'm confused about, and that goes for across all sports. But considering these guys haven't even played yet, what is the case here?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement for the MLB, between the MLB players and the owners, was just renegotiated this March, like right before the season was about to start. And then of course the season did not start.
Hmm.
So I'm pretty sure as of right now, they're not making money because of the play never actually started, and they're trying to restructure that agreement due to the fact that there's going to be less games and less revenue coming in, and all those types of things. But for players in the NBA and NHL, I believe they are still getting paid
Paid.
because they
So,
got cut off in the middle of the season.
right. Well, what's crazy is, so they were talking about the salary cuts, right? And so I know that Blake Snell, Bryce Harper, and Nolan Arenado have all spoken out in regards to this whole pay cut situation. Those are three guys right there.
Mm-hmm.
Blake Snell, not as much. Um, Three guys. Harper just signed a $400 million plus contract, right?
Yeah, like he's fine.
He's chilling, and it's tough because there's these two sides of, you have the public that sees these players complaining about making less money. Granted, they're exposing themselves to the virus and this and that. But then you have the other side with the players, and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, if our season gets cut in half and I was promised, X amount of money, and we're out here risking our health and our family's health to play, like, we shouldn't be, receiving this pay cut. Jeff Passan, who is a baseball beat reporter, works for ESPN, does some stuff for MLB Network. So he tweeted out that, so if a player is typically making $1 million, their proposal will be $434,000 salary, pretty much half. As you go up the list, a player who's making $10 million, so I would say, like, that's relatively average for a decent player. So if you're making $10 million annually, the proposal would be $2.95 million, kind of a big jump there. And then you go all the way to the top, $35 million. A guy like Harper, for example, instead of $35 million, they're making $7.8 million. So that's a giant deficit in earnings for them. Whether you have a Bryce Harper versus a guy who's clearly not on that level. It's, is that fair to say, like, you should receive this pay cut considering you're missing half the season regardless? Because the MLBPA and the owners and everybody, they're all in cahoots right now. It's just this crazy scenario. So I think that obviously needs to happen, that these guys do need to receive these pay cuts. I mean, you're Harper, you're guaranteed like 400 plus million for the rest of your career. Like, wow. I mean, you feel me on this, right? It's annoying.
I
It's
I
annoying to see
do
players
feel
are so fed up.
I do feel you on this, and there's a lot of outrage about it because what a lot of people like to do is they like to compare what's going on in the MLB. They like to compare it to the NBA and the NFL, NHL. But what people need to understand is the NHL, NBA, and NFL are all leagues with salary caps. The MLB does not have a salary cap for their teams. So that is why you have these players signing these ridiculous contracts. And in the time of a pandemic, it looks like you need a salary cap because you don't have certain revenue coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing which people uh, don't really understand, I don't know necessarily how it works for the NHL, but I do know how it works for the NBA and NFL. Is that both of those leagues, most of their revenue comes from their televised games, which are on a national scale. You'll see games on ABC, you'll see games on ESPN, TNT,
Mm-hmm.
NBA TV. But when it comes to, and with the NFL, it's Fox, NBC, CBS, and then you got Monday Night Football on ESPN, and you have Red Zone, and that's it. But when it comes to baseball, it's a very localized television deal. So you have Fox Sports Detroit, Fox Sports Sun, Fox Sports whatever, to all these very smaller markets. And because of that, the revenue that comes in is way different. And if you have these teams that are going to be playing on one site or two sites, it's likely going to be that these are, those TV deals are going to kind of be in the gutter, and you're going to have more nationally televised type of games. So that is why their pay cut is so much greater than the other leagues and stuff. But I just still feel like um, they're going to be playing, and that's also why, if they're playing half the games, the pay cut's not going to be exactly in half, because there's a lot more to it within their collective bargaining agreement and the fact that they don't have a salary cap.
So you bring up a couple of valid points there. You sent me a tweet not that long ago. It was from someone I'd never heard of, but they tweeted out, and they were verified, but it was like from a credible source. Baseball is set to be played in Arizona, Florida, and Texas, which at this point, considering that was some time ago, that doesn't seem that it is actually
It's
taking
going to play
place.
out. Yeah.
So you're talking about, all these deals with every team each having their own unique market for broadcasting, right? And in baseball, aside from that, you have 162 games, the most in any sort of sport. So does that change that baseball will be played at teams' home stadiums with no fans? Because in my eyes, that seems very possible. But the only issue is traveling, and these players are constantly on the move. When teams come here to play Detroit teams, we know they stay at the Townsend Hotel downtown. Granted, they could go out and do whatever they please at night when it's an off day or whatever, but are these guys going to have to be set in stone somewhere? Like, there's a lot of what ifs, and it's a total headache. And I can see why it's taken so long for the two sides to come and make an agreement here and come to terms on things, because you just don't know. So it's not that surprising that it's still up in the air. I've been dying, waiting for baseball to make its return. It's tough when Memorial Day comes around. There's no baseball. Perfect day. You're eating watermelon with the family, and there's no sports to watch. I mean, it's really upsetting. But we are coming close to June, when supposedly baseball is going to make its return. I hopefully expect something to be done within the next week here. I mean, I know I said that a few weeks ago, but it's just really playing out slow. I'm being optimistic. Marcus Stroman tweeted out yesterday, actually, that he doesn't think the MLB season is going to happen. And that means something coming from him, a player, because we haven't really heard that yet. All we've heard is guys complaining about these salary cuts and, having to risk playing amongst one another and not making nearly as much money. So this is quite an interesting situation we have at hand. It totally could change how contracts are made in the future for players and for broadcasting rights and things like that, because who would have ever predicted that, the coronavirus, this pandemic would happen and that this would be the case?
Yeah. I just think if baseball doesn't happen this year, it's going to be a really tough look for the players, because the owners want to get it done. And if it doesn't happen, it's going to be because the players are not agreeing to this new salary cut for this season, or, the next, however long it may be. So I think if it doesn't happen, it's not a great look for the players. And I know Stroman said he doesn't think it's going to happen, but I feel like there's a lot of players out there who are probably optimistic and do think it's going to happen. I mean, we just really don't know. I mean, Stroman's one of those bigger guys who I haven't looked at his contract details, but I'm assuming he's one of the guys who's making more money in this league and is probably against having that pay cut happen. So,
Yeah.
The NFLPA represents all the players in the league. Even
Mm-hmm.
though, we're hearing about these cream of the crop, these top players complain about it, there's still a lot of guys under them who are making a lot less money and have been making a lot less money for years and who just want to get out there and play. So as you said, it's definitely a big headache with all these TV rights and travel and all that stuff. We're just sitting ducks. We're going to have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately for us as fans, only time will tell when baseball inevitably, hopefully, makes its return. But for now, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will have with us our guest, Jonah Newman. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, everyone, welcome back. So we're here now with our guest of the weekly kickoff, soon to be TeemoSports, Mr. Jonah Newman. Jonah, how are we doing this evening?
It's going well. We're having a good time. How are you guys doing here?
We're good. We're good. We're great.
Yeah, I'm doing well.
I don't know. I can't speak for Jay over here.
No, I'm well. I'm good.
That's good.
Jonah, just first of all, what inspired you to start the weekly kickoff, which is, soon to be named TeemoSports?
Yeah, good question. It was literally just about a year ago from literally this point. I actually would like to see my notes in my phone. We really could be at the year point right now where, I'll be honest, if you guys are familiar with Morning Brew, which is your daily, digest of pretty much business news, I was thinking like, where's that for sports? Of course we have our ESPNs, of course we have our, Fox Sports and NBC Sports of the world, but, really what I came to realize was, first of all, I'm a huge soccer fan. I mean, that's my sport. I love sports in general, but soccer is really my niche. And I've always came to realize throughout my whole life, every single time I'm talking about soccer, like I'm explaining what's happening and people are like, what are you talking about? Like what even like what is happening over in Europe? Like no one knows what I'm talking about, even though like the sport itself is really simple, but the leagues and everything, there's so many intricacies. And essentially I was like, we need to figure out how to just let people know like of just, their weekly news in a very simple way, for people who, have a slight interest in soccer, but don't want to just learn, dive deep into a textbook on, what everything is. The weekly kickoff is, or now going to be TeemoSports, is your place to go for just, your weekly digest of, an easy way of just understanding what's happening around the world for soccer. Right now, I just have a newsletter for the email, which is why we have it called the weekly kickoff, because it's your weekly kickoff of what's happening. And, the reason it's going to be TeemoSports is to make it more all-encompassing. So Teemo Soccer is really going to be your social media brand, where you can go on Instagram, you can go on TikTok, you can go on Twitter for any news that's related to soccer, but in a really simple way, and having our website be kind of that encyclopedia that shows you all these easy explanations is really the point of it all. So it just to teach the people the easiest way to keep up with soccer and sports in general. That's where I'm at right now.
So we were talking about this today, Jonah, before you joined the show, but all of these changes that you plan on making literally happened today. So everything is still fresh for you. I was going to ask, so those who are subscribed to the weekly kickoff, this newsletter, what are some of the things that they can expect? And for you, when you actually go and put it out, how many days in advance before you send out the newsletter are you researching things and putting it all together? Are you doing some of it day of? What does your process look like?
Yeah, great question. Throughout the week, when, for example, today Bundesliga was happening, I'm writing down notes of like key things that are happening. So any great goal that is happening, any headline that I see in the news, I'm jotting it down. All the big headlines, the things that any person that doesn't care too much would still want to know about, but not the deep down information. And pretty much throughout the week, I collect all the big pieces of news and information. And when it comes time for Sunday, because I usually like to send out those newsletters Monday or Tuesday, what I'm doing pretty much is just, I'm compiling all that news together. I'm trying to pretty much like divide it into three separate categories, or three separate headers within the newsletter. And yeah, I mean, I try to just keep it with the biggest news of the week, the biggest goals of the week, any biggest highlights, the best game, and anything else that's going around the world. So it's just constantly just jotting down information, you know?
Yeah, constantly staying up to date, always looking at your phone, checking scores, things like that. And
Exactly.
anytime something important happens, you write it down and boom, it goes in the newsletter.
Exactly.
So speaking of kind of, soccer news and what was going on around the world, I was just wondering what your take on, and what leagues did you find most interesting and most exciting before COVID hit? Were there certain leagues that were having like a really close race at the top, or, stuff like that?
Yeah. To answer that question, first off, in terms of what I've been always, watching, the English Premier League, that's where, that's really what I'm watching and following the most for sure. I'm actually wearing my club, Manchester City. I've been supporting them since like 2010, which is a quite good time to start following
Yeah.
Manchester City. They kind of had a whole influx of some good old oil money from the United Arab Emirates. But yeah, and the reason being for the Premier League, it's England. It's the most relatable. Everyone speaks English there. It's easy to kind of, you have a lot of coverage of it, which is really easy. But going into the closest title races, the Premier League was a blowout. Liverpool was way ahead of Manchester City, who was second. And going into the season, Manchester City, people were thinking they were going to three-peat. They won the last two leagues, and people thought this is their year again still. But, Jurgen Klopp, the manager of Liverpool, just brought his team to absolute excellence this year. And they were about a few games – they were a win away from actually clinching the league, which is hilarious.
Wow.
And fun fact, so Liverpool – and they're one of the most historic clubs in the world. And I'm sure even your average Joe maybe knows of Liverpool, definitely have heard of the city. They've actually never won the English Premier League.
Wow.
You might think like that makes no sense because they've been around for like over 100 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the reason being is that the Premier League was actually invented or was created in 1994, I believe. Which seems really late because up until that year, sometime in the mid-90s, don't quote me on that. I think it's 94. But up until that year, it was just the English Football League. There wasn't actually the Premier League, which is like the commercialized version of what we see of today as the top tier English soccer. And Liverpool since then has still not won it, which has been crazy. And they're about to do it for the first time this year. And then COVID hit, and they are still waiting to, lift that trophy. It's crazy.
Speaking of COVID hitting, per se, how has that affected interleague play, such as the Champions League?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point because, as we've been saying for a lot of sports, a lot of things are up in the air, right? We're not really sure what's happening. The president of UEFA, which is like the governing body of soccer, of world soccer, pretty much organizes the Champions League, like what you're talking about. He was making a claim that they're going to resume come August 7th or early August, pretty much, and they're going to try to do pretty much like an expedited version of Champions League. A fast forwarded way of playing matches closer together, not spreading them out so much. So it's really affected it in a way that, first of all, we're still not sure. But from what we're led to assume is that it's still going to continue by the end of the summer. And that's something that we're just going to have to, look and wait to see. And, we still have Manchester City who still can win it, and we got a bunch of other clubs who are, chasing it down. We got Barcelona. They had a good reset from COVID. A lot of teams are benefiting, some are not, but Champions League is exciting, and I think we're all excited for it to come back to come together. Really are.
Yeah, that's definitely something that soccer fans around the world can look forward to. But meanwhile, there has been soccer that has been being played right now, as you mentioned earlier, in the Bundesliga. So my question to you is, have you been watching that, and what are the best teams to follow in that league? and we had Der Classica, I think, yesterday, which is a huge game.
Huge game. Yeah, no, Bundesliga's back, which is amazing. Definitely been interesting. I have been watching it, not as much as I thought I would, in all honesty. When the first week came, I won the first match. I think it was Schalke versus Dortmund, which is another, honestly, a bigger rivalry than Dortmund versus Bayern, just given the German, intricacies and whatnot. But when I watched that game, without having any fans, I was like, this is just the strangest thing. Like, it was just watching like a practice match. But in terms of like the best teams, we have Bayern Munich on on pretty much the top of the league, and people are saying they pretty much are going to run away with the title at this point, because they just beat Dortmund, like you're talking about, in Der Klassiker. Dortmund's, trailing behind with 7 points in second. And for those of you who don't know the whole point structure, it's a great reason to come to TeemoSports and to Teemo Soccer. That's what we're going to be able to easily tell you about that. So head on over to TeemoSports.com for that one. But yeah, in terms of Bundesliga, there's a lot of action and some great goals, high-scoring matches, and it's been really exciting to watch.
Yeah, so kind of building off of what you just said about when you were first watching and there being no fans and no noise and how strange that was. One thing that I noticed yesterday when I was watching the match between Dortmund and Bayern was that they were actually pumping in a ton of artificial fan noise. And I know that there have been some teams that have had the opportunity where fans can pay a small fee to have their cardboard cutout put into the stands. Wow. How do you feel about those types of things going on to kind of simulate the real atmosphere of a game?
Yeah, simply put, I'm for it all. Absolutely. Like, personally, I love it. Yeah, so you're talking about the cardboard cutouts. Yeah, Borussia Mönchengladbach, they fully put out 13,000 individualized cardboard cutouts of their fans, which I think is amazing. I mean, that just shows a lot of dedication to the supporters, and I think that's amazing. And then, yeah, when you're talking about the fake audio track, I guess you could put it, from one aspect of it, it's like, oh, it's weird just to kind of have like artificial like fans because it's not real. So it makes it less genuine and it's so like commercialized and whatnot. But at the end of the day, if you try to watch a match without fans, it's weird as shit. And like,
it's so weird.
It's right. It's like, it's completely different. And what I'm most impressed with is it's not just a constant cheering. I think they have like a keyboard or something of like different tracks.
A soundboard, yeah.
A soundboard, right. And they like, whether it's like a ref pulling out a yellow card and you'll hear the fans booing, or they're on a fast break and you'll hear the crowd pick up. I mean, all of the small parts of the game, the crowd's adjusting to it, and it feels so real. So I got to give props to the Bundesliga right now.
That's one thing I was going to mention is when I was watching the game the other day, there were certain parts where they had the camera angles like zoomed in on the field only, and you really couldn't see the empty stands, and they still had that noise coming in. I totally kind of forgot that it was an empty stadium for a few minutes there. So
yeah, I was going to say there's totally this new position opened up where they're like isolated, on the field or somewhere, and they have full control over that, making all the calls. If the ref pulls a yellow card or making these sounds, filling the stadium with all this sound. So that's, if you're that person, you got quite an interesting job, something super creative, and that you really have to be paying full attention to the game like 24/7. You can't take your attention off for a second.
Yeah, and the people, or the person who's doing that for each game does a phenomenal job. I mean, I'm talking like split second. He's, or she, could be a woman, don't know, but whoever's doing that is fully, responsive in the millisecond, and that's how genuine it is. It's not like you have a delayed response. So if there's another job opening for another club, I'm gonna have to submit my application. I think it's quite the job to have right now.
Yeah, totally. So Jonah, for some of our listeners out there that bet, what are some of the trends that you're looking for or that you expect to see within the different leagues once everything kind of returns to normal again?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm looking forward to in terms of what's either happening on the pitch, on the field, and what's happening off of it. Uh, and I know Jason and I kind of talked back and forth about, how, this whole, pretty much hiatus has affected the play in the field, and how that's affecting kind of betting and how you should bet the over, the under, who you should be betting for. And what I think is really interesting, and my personal take is, one effect is I think there's going to be a lot of high scoring games, just being because, these teams haven't practiced together long enough. So their defensive form isn't as, uptight. And I think there's a lot of holes in these teams and a lack of unity. So individual raw, offensive talent will be able to break through that. And we've seen that already a little bit with the Bundesliga, some high scoring games. But then you see the other end of it where teams are just ultra conservative and they don't want to, take any chances. But in terms of off the pitch and what trends I'm expecting, what I'm not looking forward to, even though from a fan it's great to have all these back-to-back games, which is what we're expected to see, is an expedited season of all these different leagues. But I think we're about to see an incredible amount of injuries. And I think it's been talked about, but I'm worried that, out of all sports, I mean, we're going to see it across the board. I mean, we talk about basketball, football. I mean, it's going to happen across the board. But in my opinion, I do think soccer does take the most fitness out of all of them. And because of that, playing 90 minutes straight on running back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean, and one thing I meant to mention as well, a new thing that they did implement with Bundesliga. So usually teams are allowed to have 3 substitutes per game. And once you get subbed off, you're not allowed to get subbed back on.
It's 5 now, isn't it? Yeah.
It is 5. And I think Schalke took advantage of that first game. They were like right away, like, all right, fuck it, we're just gonna put all of our players on. And like, and even like Dortmund that first game, they did 4 subs too. I mean, and they put 2 on like the last minute just because they could. So yeah, it's very interesting to see how these adjustments are gonna happen. But I'm definitely excited to see just a boatload of soccer. I fucking miss the sport so much.
Definitely. And so moving on to our next question, who are some of the younger players that might not be as well known around the globe right now that people should keep their eye on?
Yeah, no, great question. I think first and foremost, sticking it to our Americans here, there's a few that I should be shouting out. Christian Pulisic. I mean, he might be known to many, but if you don't know him, give him a quick Google. This kid's, I think he's 20. Maybe 19 still. Again, don't quote me on this, but he used to play for Dortmund, and now he's over in Chelsea in London. And I mean, this kid's an all-star. He's already a captain for the U.S. team. He's on track to be the best U.S. soccer player ever. I think he already is, in all honesty. So he's an absolute stud. And another American player who's also who is still in the Bundesliga is Weston McKennie, who plays for Schalke. And he's a midfielder. I mean, he's absolutely incredible. He's probably the U.S. soccer does have actually a lot of young talent, and they all happen to be in the Bundesliga. The German league does a lot of good player development for young kids, and you see that a lot. And on that note, we're seeing one of the best young talents still in the Bundesliga, Jadon Sancho. He plays for Dortmund, and so he used to play for Manchester City, actually, in the youth academy, a squad. He ended up leaving on really bad terms because you know how the Americans sorry, not the Americans, but all the European teams come over to America to play during the summer. In those
they do a little tour. Like they play at the Big House. They play in Chicago.
Exactly. I think it's called the International Cups. I don't know.
I've gone to the games. I don't even remember what it's called though. Yeah.
Which game did you go to?
I went to Real Madrid versus Man U. I want to say 4 years ago, maybe.
That's hype. Yeah, I went to Real Madrid versus Chelsea in the Big House too. So yeah, no, that's epic. But back to yeah. So I think I was talking about Jadon Sancho. Oh yeah, so he wasn't invited to go on that tour with Manchester City, and he was such a young kid. I mean, this kid is 17, and he wasn't invited, and he was pissed. He skipped practice. Next day, they booed him from the club. And,
wow.
Yeah, and he was like a young talent that everyone knew. So then Dortmund, took him right away, and now he's been there for about a year and a half. And this year, this season, he's the first player to combine for 30 goals and assists combined in the league. And I think he's
Wow.
19. Yeah, this kid's fucking insane. Like he's actually, he's like, I mean, if you had to like draw a comparison, I mean, I'm thinking like of a Jean Morant in basketball right now. I mean,
Nice.
like
Yeah.
we're thinking like this. I mean, as long as both don't get injured, I think they're both bound to be just the best in the league. You know, and that's the way I see it. And then one more player, again, still on Dortmund, but I think it's worth shouting out is Erling Haaland, I should say, actually. I mean, he's just a world-class striker right now. I mean, he's just he's like a pure striker who's just, I mean, he's got a wicked shot. I mean, this kid's absolutely on fire. I mean, not much more to say to him than he's just a teenage sensation and most highly touted, forward in the world right now. So definitely got a lot of young talent. And of course, just Kylian Mbappe, I think who everyone might know.
Of course, yeah.
And but definitely there's a lot, talent's getting better and better, just like with every sport. So it's exciting to see what's to come.
All right, Jonah, help me out here. Why is it called soccer and not football in the U.S.?
Well, let me ask you a question. Can you guess, unless you already know, if you know, tell me, but do you know which country invented the word soccer? Take a guess.
You're just putting me on the spot.
I feel like it's not the United States because you asked that question. Like I feel like
it's reverse psychology and maybe it is.
I don't know.
I'm gonna guess the United States because I don't know another country that calls it soccer.
I'll say
it's probably wrong though.
Yeah, it's
I'm right
not
there with
the
you.
US.
I knew it.
And it actually is England. They were
really.
The word did come from England, and this was, I mean, we're talking 1800s, I believe. And I think it was just pretty basic of the fact that you wear high socks. And there's just like, let's just call it soccer. And they just never wanted to like fully adapt that name because they didn't really fuck with it that much. And I think the US was like, all right, let's just be different like we always like to be. And we're just out here with the word soccer. And I'm not too mad, but like I kind of am. I don't know. But it's an interesting history for sure.
And we also have American football, so it's kind of,
Shouldn't that be called handball though? I mean, that's what I've always thought.
But there is also handball. That's also a sport.
That just shouldn't be a sport.
There you go. You heard it here first.
I'll butt into that. I actually love handball, and I've played it so many times, like in gym in high school and like middle school. It's a blast. I mean, I think I remember right, it's literally soccer, but like you're throwing. It's like dodgeball. It's like a combination of both, and you have a goalie and whatnot. It's fun. I mean, I just love whipping, a ball around. But yeah, I don't know about that, Jason. Handball, I think you gotta respect it. You gotta respect handball.
I'll lay off then.
Yeah, please feel free to refrain. Jonah, tell us a little bit about where you think the growth of professional soccer in the U.S., how far it's come, what you see in terms of the future, maybe 5-10 years down the road. Obviously post-virus. What do you think that's going to look like?
Yeah, no, that's the question, right? I mean, that's where every American's thinking. And, it's funny that people think we've kind of kept on improving. We actually really haven't. When you look at the scale of like the World Cup, I think that's like the best way to judge it. Just because if you don't know, we didn't make the World Cup in 2018, which is really disappointing. And we really should have. We're in a really easy region of America to qualify, or region of the world to qualify. And, we've made it far in the 90s. I mean, back in 90, when the World Cup was in Chicago, I mean, we made it far. We made it past the group stage. And there are times that the U.S. gets won in some little runs in the World Cup. And, we've always, we got out of the group of death in 2010 at one point. So we've had our like high points of like making it far in, the World Cup, which is always the best way to judge it. But then the next year, it's like, all right, well, now we're out of the World Cup. So how can we say that we progressed? But to, I guess, answer your question on less of a macro scale, but more micro in terms of like looking at the players, I mean, definitely it's been improving. You got players like Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie, like I said. I mean, we're getting more and more of those players, and that's only going to continue, And, we're going to continue to send our players over to Europe so they can get better over there. And, I think a big hindrance to our progress is the MLS, in all honesty. I don't think that's a hot take. I just think everyone agrees. Unfortunately, there's just not good player development in the MLS. So that's really where we see players die, is when we keep them over here in the U.S. But I really do believe that, come 15 years, I would say 10 years down the line, we'll be better. I don't think we're going to be world class. Will we ever make it to the point of being like a Brazil, like a current Spain, Germany, teams like that? Maybe in a few generations. Not the players that we're seeing on the field, I truly don't see us getting to that world-class dominance. I mean, it runs deep, because it's not just the players. I mean, it's the coaches, it's the whole staff, and we just don't know how to breed these type of academies and these type of players and the systems that allow for this success. We are new to the game because we don't have it's because we have the MLS. I'll be honest. I really point the finger to the MLS. And because we love to have big market teams. So, I'm not sure, Brandon. And Jason, I feel like you might be familiar with Brandon. Are you familiar with the whole promotion and relegation aspect of, league play?
No, not quite. My knowledge probably is not as extensive as Jason's, let alone yours, for sure.
Okay. Well, I won't dive too deep into it. But pretty much, any team who's playing in the English Premier League, for example, Manchester United, I'm sure you've heard of them. If they have a really bad season and they finish bottom 3, they get relegated, demoted down to the league below, and they don't play in the Premier League the next year. So that's actually, it's a very interesting concept.
And some leagues below move up. There's some teams in the league below. Yeah.
After a winning season.
Right.
Per se,
because they don't have a draft. There's no, if you're at the bottom, there's not a draft to bump you up. It's actually, nope, you are incentivized to actually not do bad and to keep afloat pretty much. And because of this, there's all these academy systems that have been built. And, even when starting, Lionel Messi, he went to Barcelona when he was 8 years old, over from Argentina.
There you go.
Argentina. Argentina.
Honestly, I might just have to create a country at this point. Anyways, though, it's all about the youth development, and we just don't have it here in the U.S. for a variety of reasons. That can be a whole nother podcast in itself of why the U.S. is doomed. So there's a lot that we have to overcome, but I do think that there is, relative progress to be made, and we will get better. And we have players like Christian Pulisic to prove that. I'm excited.
So, kind of touching on the note that you made about players coming over here to die, how do you feel about these foreign players that come over to the U.S. towards the tail ends of their career, such as, Beckham, Rooney, Zlatan, the list goes on. What are your thoughts on that? Are they just coming here to sort of chase a bag, get a little more famous and dip? Do you think it's good for the MLS? Just your thoughts.
Yeah, totally. I do. First of all, I do think it's good for the MLS. Do I think the MLS is like every other league? No, and it won't ever get to any other league because it's just formatted so differently. But I think it's amazing that if we get players, when we get players like Zlatan and Wayne Rooney coming in, it does attract more people to come to these games and to watch them on TV, and for networks to actually be incentivized to be like, hey, let's actually put this on TV. And that's how people get to watch it. And I think that's the first step, It's, you can't take these huge steps of being like, oh, well, we're not getting young talent. It's amazing. Well, we're not there yet. We got to take what makes sense. And, what makes sense is getting big money names. And I think we're making the right steps and getting these players in. And so I'm very happy with it all. I really am. Am I watching these games? Sometimes. I mean, not really. But hey, if I'm seeing Zlatan, and he's not in that MLS anymore, but when he was on, I was easily watching it because Zlatan's Zlatan.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'll tell you what, even I am familiar with Zlatan. I know his ways.
There you go.
He's viewed as like the cocky dude, and the goat in a sense, a goat in his own standings. He's quite the interesting character. Brings a lot of personality to the game of soccer. So that just goes to show that even you're someone like me who doesn't keep up to soccer that much, even though I played for 7 years, that I still, yes, I did. I touched on that at the beginning of the episode, believe it or not. But I am familiar with Zlatan and his long, silky black hair that, as Jason said, maybe he was here to just, catch a bag and do his thing.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon, we're going to need to see some of those highlight reels. I got to say.
Yeah, I think when I was playing, there was definitely no iPhone. There was like camcorders, like a handheld recorder. That was it. There's no footage.
So you burned the footage, in other words.
Hold on. Everybody hold your horses, because this is about to get crazy. This was me.
There you go. Like a young Ronaldo.
Like a young Ronaldo.
I don't think I've seen you that happy in a long time, Brandon. You look thrilled to be out there.
I was thrilled at the time. I guess. You could see with the hand on the hip and, repping Farmington Hills recreational soccer. What's funny, too, believe it or not, is there's a lot of us out there, those from the Farmington Hills, West Bloomfield area, who played in that league. It was like a house league, rec league.
Right.
As like Eli Wild played. David Vinsky, I think we mentioned him before. Jared Char, we mentioned. A bunch of local kids. We all grew up playing in that league. So who would have thought? I definitely don't think it's around anymore. But there you guys go. Between you, Jason, and Jonah, and all of our listeners, anybody watching, that was how I looked when I played soccer. A little chubby, but I hated it. It was the worst. And why it's still on my desk, I don't know. It sits there as a reminder to never watch soccer again.
Exactly.
So
it never leaves your heart.
Yes, it hasn't. It won't.
I got one last question for you here on a little bit of a lighter note. I know Brandon does not know who this person is, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners have no idea who it is. But will you please explain who Ray Hudson is and why every person listening right now should know who he is and look him up on YouTube?
Yeah. I didn't expect this to be on. Jason, I know how much you're aware of his literal goatness. So let me maybe bring it back to some relativity for some people here, because I'm sure some basketball fans know Marv Albert. Personally, I think Marv Albert is the best announcer. He's just incredible. His voice. So imagine Marv Albert on like 10 doses of steroids. And when I mean steroids, like I'm talking as lambastic and extroverted as he is. And pretty much Ray Hudson is he's the color commentator it's actually for BN Sports on which is for La Liga, which is the Spanish league. So he gets a lot of action on Messi and when Ronaldo was back in Real Madrid. And let me tell you, if you just type in Ray Hudson Messi highlights, you will hear the greatest analogies, similes being made about a player scoring a goal ever. This man, will equate Messi slotting in a goal to a ballerina on ice while on fire on top of riding a gorilla. This man is on the spot coming at you with just the craziest, absolutely most extraordinary vocabulary and just descriptions of a goal. And every viewer, I think, just has an obligation right now, or after the Bagel and Locks episode, to Google Ray Hudson, Lionel Messi highlights. Really,
Jonah,
for Messi.
Who's the guy though who commentates for FIFA, like the video game? I can't think of his name.
Martin
So
Tyler.
yeah, Martin
Martin
Tyler.
Tyler.
So
Okay.
Martin Tyler is, yeah. But
He's a classic. He
he is a
is like
classic.
that's who I really think of. Like he's the Mike Breen, to soccer. His, it. Listen, I played FIFA every now and then, but that regardless, I haven't played in years. I can still hear his voice commentate, doing play-by-play as I'm running down the field.
Yeah.
And that's really saying something.
Yeah.
So
I wish I had an accent or had a good I can impersonate. That's just not my thing. I really wish it was. But for the viewers out here, check out Martin Tyler too. I mean, this guy's a legend, but definitely Ray Hudson is, for any sports fan, you just gotta watch. Gotta watch. Glad you asked it, Jason. That was needed.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard him talk about equating goals and, crossing players up to, players being a Jedi Knight, dribbling through giraffes' legs, a beautiful woman in a bikini on a beach. I mean, he literally, from A to Z, has an encyclopedia of the most phenomenal sayings you've ever heard while watching a match.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to go down as probably the greatest commentator of all time. I just hope that Americans are able to get known to him more. So here's where it starts. We're telling you right now. You heard it here first.
Well, Jonah, before we let you go, I just have one thing to ask. I want to hear your best soccer call of a goal. I want to hear your best goal. I don't want to do it. I don't want to spoil it for everybody. I want to hear your best impression. Just
Ben, I told you.
He literally just said that he doesn't do that.
About having an accent, like that makes sense. But just just be yourself for 5 seconds and let it rip.
How about this? Let me read you off a Ray Hudson quote right now, and we'll call it on that. Okay?
Okay.
I'm down for that.
All right. All right. Okay. So we'll do one short one, and we'll call it. Okay. Again, the medicine man arrives and sinks in his flaming spear into the hearts of Real Madrid. Or better yet, Messi. You could drop a tarantula into his shorts, and he'll still be cool. Or even defenders try to follow him on Facebook, and he comes out on Twitter. That's how evasive he is.
Wow. What?
I'm telling you, you have to check him out.
I mean, that's like on the spot too. He doesn't, I don't think he has that prepared. I really think he's on his toes.
Wow. I believe you. That's fully on his toes, right on the spot. I don't know how he does that. But yeah, I'll for sure have to check him out. And not only that, but anyone, to our viewers out there, definitely go check out the weekly kickoff, which now is TeemoSports. And
let me spell it out real quick.
Let them know where they can find you.
Please,
because you would probably think Teemo is like team, like TEAM, but we do it a little different here. So it's TEEMO sports.com. And you'll be able to
have the link.
We'll have the link.
We will have the link. So have no fear, Jonah. Have no fear.
Yeah. So you'll be able to get the newsletter and follow us on social media and, be able to get that soccer digest. And within TeemoSports, more sports coverage to come. But for now, we're focusing on soccer.
Awesome, Jonah. Well, thanks for joining us today on Bagels and Locks. I had a blast. I definitely learned a lot. And I hope you had fun. I know you're an avid listener, and you were really excited to join us here today. And, it was a pleasure bringing you on.
And that was our interview with Jonah Newman of the Weekly Kickoff, soon to be TeemoSports. And personally, Brandon, I thought that was just an awesome interview. He really gave us some great in-depth answers and provided some really good analysis for a lot of our listeners who might not know that much about soccer.
Yeah, Jonah was great. I, for one, am one of those people, truly. Even though I played it growing up, it was something that just fizzled out and never really had much interest for it. But Jonah was totally an expert, knew exactly what he was talking about. And it was great to hear some of his insight that he had, some of his thoughts on the future of soccer, especially, players in the U.S. And whatnot. So I'm glad that we could have him on and shed a little light on soccer, which, right now that's pretty much, aside from the KBO, that's going on in full detail. So to have Jonah on it to talk about it and bring us home on it was great. And yeah, maybe we had said there's potential that he'll be on a later show. So it was great having him.
Yeah, and so I think that will move us on to our next topic of this episode, which has to do with the NHL. Now, Brandon, neither of us are the biggest hockey fans and really follow the sport religiously as some people do. Even though we've grown up in Detroit and have had the Red Wings and they've been so great for so many years, they're sort of in a slump right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the NHL did announce that they are officially going to adopt a 24-team playoff if the season does return. Now, the way that worked is the top 4 teams in each conference ranked by their points. So Boston, Tampa Bay, Washington, and Philadelphia in the East, and St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, and Dallas in the West will play a separate round-robin tournament to determine seeding in the first round, and they will be played with regular season rules with overtime and shootouts. And then after that, the remaining 16 teams seeded by conference will play best of 5 play-in series, and these games will be played with playoff overtime rules, and these play-in series will determine which teams advance to a traditional 16-team Stanley Cup playoff bracket. Now, Brandon, even though, as I mentioned, neither of us really follow hockey that much, when it comes playoff time, I am absolutely locked into the Stanley Cup playoffs. I actually believe it may be the best playoffs of all the sports that we have. I mean, there's just something about these guys out there on the ice where they just put it into a different gear, and every game is so close and so intense, and I just can't take my eyes off of it. And meanwhile, I hardly watch any of the regular season.
Yeah, you literally took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say there's something about playoff hockey and the playoff hockey atmosphere where your eyes are glued. And in hockey, in the playoffs, like every second counts. And if you think about it, I mean, yes, like the NBA, that's true, but there's just something different about when you watch hockey and having that be the case. You're on skates, and hockey is one of those games where there's it's not like we're basketball where there could be like so many timeouts called, especially if it's coming down to, the last 10 seconds and it's like a 2-point game or something crazy like that, where there's a lot of time taken off the clock, everything's slowed down. In hockey, it's very continuous, and they're going and they're, switching lines every, couple minutes. So there's just something about it where the average viewer even is so focused in on playoff hockey. So what's interesting about this is they're saying that the playoffs would be held inside empty arenas at 2 cities. So players and staff and like others, employees would be housed during the season. So this is interesting because it makes you think of like in the Olympics, like when countries are situated in like the village, quote unquote, and they don't necessarily go anywhere, like they're amongst one another. And this is how I honestly, and it seems especially in the NBA, how they were talking about potentially playing in Disney World. That's the first thing that comes to mind is you have all the players stacked in one area. They can't necessarily leave, go check out the city or whatnot. It's very much like that style. And you see that that's the approach that the NHL is taking. So in terms of potential locations, they're saying Chicago, Columbus, Dallas, Las Vegas, Los Angeles. What's tricky about the NHL is that there's so many teams that are Canadian, which makes things, difficult in terms of passports. And, we're not going to go into that because how much do I know about, being over the border for X amount of time. But something else, too, is they're talking about that these facilities or wherever the games will be held will be without fans. And, they talk about teams and all sports being played without fans, it's like, okay, it's happening right now in soccer, but to think about playoff hockey with no fans, I mean, we were sitting here talking about just how exciting it is, and you can only imagine to be a player, and like any fake sound, like the fake sound that's pumped into the stadium, it doesn't do it for them. It's a totally different atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even really think about that, but it definitely will be very different. And in that NHL, a lot of those guys are chirping each other and talking a lot of shit more so than the other leagues. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that we will be able to hear. But yeah, that is truly it's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to change that atmosphere that we were just talking about and how electric and unique it is. Should be interesting to see how it does play out. But
Right. You think of like fights too. I mean, hockey is known for fighting. People love that. Banging on the glass, like there's none of that. So how will players react to this sort of new way of life in a playoff atmosphere will be really interesting to see. All right. So you ready for this? So I've never seen anything like this before ever, and I'll just leave it at that. Let's take a look. So we muted the sound here, but I can give some play-by-play per se. So we're stepping up to the plate. It looks rather awkward, right? Like maybe he's gonna hit it as a righty, and then boom, what is this? Boom, look at that.
I mean,
so if you think about this,
you said you were doing the play-by-play, so you got to describe it.
Well, I am doing the play-by-play, right? But this is the thing. He's batting, so if we take a look, we can slow it down here. Okay, so this is kind of like a good sign. So imagine being a right-handed hitter, right? Like how he's holding the bat.
So first of all, you have to describe how he's standing, okay? He's batting like a right-handed batter, but he's in like the box of a left-handed batter, but
correct.
Still has his right-handed batter pose. So
yeah.
The pitch is coming behind his back.
Yes, the pitch is coming behind him, and he doesn't even see it per se, right? He's just swinging. So standing as a righty in the left-handed side of the batter's box, he fully comes around to the right, full torso twist and everything, and without looking, swings as if he was a lefty, right? So to think about this, if you're not watching but you're listening, it is starting batting as a righty, but finishing the swing as if you were left-handed. So you have, the concept of switch hitting, which is crazy. You have Pat Venditti, who's a guy who's ambidextrous, who could throw with both his hands. This is something I've never seen before and is super hard to describe in a sense. Hits a bomb basically behind his back. So, Jason, I don't know about you. I may give this a try because why not? I think it's going to hurt like
you better
hell.
Record that for our listeners and viewers if you
know
end
what?
up giving this a try.
Maybe I'll give it a try. And in next week's episode, we can see just how I fared out. How I kind of attempted to do this behind the back.
My prediction is you trip over yourself and end up face first in the ground.
So the real question here is, does this benefit you if you're left-handed? Because I am. So I would think if I could time it right so that when I don't even know.
Well, you would do it the other way around. You would line up in the other's batter's box, facing the other way.
Standing as a righty in the batter's box, holding the bat left-handed. But then I would be finishing the swing as a right. Like, dude, you know what? This has to be tested. This totally has to be tested. So here's the deal. Next week, we're gonna test this out. And this is going to be in episode 5. So you'll have to stay for the very end because you will see my attempt at trying to do this. It's going to be tough, but I will try my best. I got,
it's definitely
I got some time. I was gonna say I got a couple days to really get my hone in on my skill, my craft of doing this. And yeah, that should be exciting. I don't know about you, Jason.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're dying to watch.
All I have to say is it'll definitely make for some good content. If you want to actually see what we're talking about, check out Corked Bats on Instagram at KORKEDBATS. That's at Corked Bats on Instagram. Also, ESPN posted a video on it, but they post a ton of stuff, so it can get lost in the jumble on there. But my biggest problem with this is ESPN posts, this home run is so absurd, you have to see it to believe it. First of all, we don't see this ball go over the fence. Second of all, I think this thing is screaming foul ball. If you look at it again, Brandon, I just don't think that this is ending up in play. And it would make sense that it would not be ending up in play because of the way he's aligned in the batter's box and the way he's swinging the bat. Yeah, I'll give it to him. He hit a bomb that probably maybe like two other people in the world could do, but it's not in play. From what I've seen, I don't think this is a. Go on.
It's funny you say that because as I'm watching it, it shows like the umpire almost signaling foul ball, like
Because
going
that's
like
what I'm
this.
saying.
And you're right. So what the hell? Why mislead us like that?
That's my big issue with it.
It fooled me because I wasn't paying that close attention. Just from the second he hit the ball, I was like, whoa, I've never seen anything like that.
It's some good old ESPN clickbait. And watch, after he hits this, watch all the people on the field and where they're looking and the way they're moving. Because I feel like it's not in play.
I hate to say it. I think you're right. I don't think
in this video, I mean, it doesn't say the Instagram video, at least, which is where ESPN got it from. It doesn't say it's a home run. Like the caption is Griffey walked so this man could run. They're not just saying, this guy just hit a home run. So yeah. I kind of have some beef with ESPN now over that.
Yeah, they definitely led us in the wrong direction there. Makes it all more interesting for me if I could actually hit a ball fair.
Yeah, if you hit it fair, this guy is nothing on you.
That's so true. All right, well, you guys heard it here. You have to tune in next week to see. I'm going to go practice right now. But for my co-host, Jason Silverstone, I'm Brandon Rothenberg. You guys just tune into Bagels and Locks. We'll see you next week.